And by Talo Lineno, Kunisnes, Equalai, Iabo, Ibo Media, Bo, Eba Snewateluno, Yabo, Yankili, and the Yonyo, Dinukumpa, Bastama Kifene Mena, an Igbo Nine, and Igbo community, and Bastama Kiena, Ngorowe, nke Igbo maka mkpagbu na akpagbu ndị Igbo erika mana ya bụ ife bụ ya wetara n'ụbọchị nke taata anụwa bụ ụbọchị nke akara aka ka anyị na-akpọ ya ya bụ gbasara maka ihe Biafran Prime Minister bụ Maazị Simon Ekpa kwugasị n'iru akwụkwọ dị iche iche nke anyị na-ama njebe akpọba afọ ya oge ugbu a ọ kọwawa ya onye mere ga-eji tiri ya n'iru akwụkwọ a ka unu gee ya bụ ife unu ga-esia ya unu adrọpụrụ anyị unu ekwuo ihe unu chere n'ụdị nke unu gbasara maka ihe ndị a niile Biafran Prime Minister kwuru n'iru akwụkwọ dị iche iche. Over to you, sir.
But they died for it. It is not because they were killed, but indeed their views has become part of international laws for a progressive world. This I would say, was a foundation of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, that all men are equal, but Ball and Tyler died for saying and advocating for it. That is evolution of freedom and human rights. What was abolished, what was a dangerous thing 630 years ago has become your law today because somebody stood and said it. That's why, as a Prime Minister of the Biafra Republic Government in Exile, it does not matter what you call me today. What matters to me is what you call me after 10 years, when I have liberated my people. This is the reason many countries like Finland, who are well advanced, can't hand Simon Ekpa over to any terrorist country, like Nigeria, for standing firm, fighting and defending his people, and I stand to be challenged anywhere. Finland is living in the future. It's a fact. My fellow Biafrans, let me remind you that there is another great speech called "Let us make reparation to Africa." Reparation is today word that many human rights activists, many freedom fighters are preaching freely. Including in the British Empire, citing inhuman practices as an infusion of human blood. Then, the advocacy of Wilberforce was so dangerous, become a threat to the British Empire. 2 years before Wilberforce made the speech, 132 African slaves were thrown into the sea from a slave ship. Hence, the reference to human blood. He criticized the use of violence and tyranny among seamen and merchants towards slaves, and cited his belief in the commandment, "Thou shalt not murder," as the source of his abolitionist belief. Wilberforce also argued, "Thou shalt do no murder," as the source of his abolitionist belief. He argued that such cruel trade could not possibly be regulated or conducted in a human way. Total abolition is the only possible cure, he argued. This speech made by Wilberforce made any plea of ignorance on the part of his fellow MPs at the House of Commons of the United Kingdom. Made them untenable. The callousness of the slave trade was revealed for all to see for the very first time. The campaign of Wilberforce and others to bring to an end to slavery was a very hard fight. They fought it. This speech was a significant moment in bringing about the British West Indies in 1807 and the Slavery Abolition Act in 1833, which abolished slavery throughout the British Empire. This is evolution of freedom. I want you to pay attention to today's State of the Union, where we are making history the way it is, to make sure we save our people from the hand of the Nigeria Islamic State. We will make a very tough decisions as we move on from today going forward. This decision will later become history. So I'm making references to the other heroes and heroines of this world, who at the time of their own freedom fighting, everything they did became abominable, only for what they did to become the law that guides the universe today. It is the evolution of freedom fighting and freedom. It is important to educate our people while we are taking the steps of the Biafra government. The Biafra government are taking the step it's taking today, is that we have figured out what will work for us against Nigeria. It is also very important to educate our people how history are made as we go to the poll for our self-referendum, because they continue to ask, is UN supporting you? Is America supporting you? Do you have a European Union observers? And I have told them we don't need any of those observers. We are conducting this referendum by ourselves, and we are going to declare Biafra, defend it with every mechanism that we have. And it will go down in history as Biafra used every mechanism to liberate themselves from Nigeria Islamic State. In the United States, a woman had no right to vote in an election until a woman called Susan Anthony fought for it. Somebody somewhere have to always stood up and fight. Somebody somewhere had always stood up to fight before change could happen. That is exactly what the Prime Minister of Biafra Republic Government in Ezra, Simon Ekpa, and the entire cabinet and the entire government in exile are doing today. Somebody somewhere have to start this fight, and it will be successful at the end of the day. When you remain resolute and never change your principle according to who you meet. The question Susan Anthony asked in one of her famous speech was, are women person? Susan Anthony was an American suffragette and a co-founder of the National Women Suffrage Association, a group that fought for women's right to vote in the United States. In 1872, she became the first American woman to vote in an election. Listen, just 1872, women didn't have the right to vote in America. 1872. This woman took it upon herself, to fight and liberated women from the shackles of the American system that made them lesser human. She became the first American woman to vote in an election, albeit illegally. She was charged in January of 1873 for voting without a lawful right to vote. Though she wasn't allowed to speak, even to defend herself in the court. She made this speech of our women person in the month running up to her trial. In the speech, she argued that in voting, she was simply exercising her right, citizens' right. Quoting the U.S. Constitution, she pointed out that it was not the white male citizens that formed the Union of the States of America, but we, the people, and that as a person, she deserved the right to participate in democracy. Are women person? She famously asked. If so, she then argued, they are citizens of the United States. Why then should they not have the right to vote? I want you to listen to understand the evolution of freedom. Before she did it, nobody ever stood up to fight for women's rights to vote in the United States. She took it upon herself. That she campaigned for. She also argued that black people should have right to vote, since they also are persons and choose U.S. citizens. This idea of personhood may seem very simple, but Susan Anthony's argument and voting and kicking against the freedom of Biafra, equality before the law, was her radical aspiration. Despite her cogent argument, she was found guilty. She was found guilty for rising up against the system of $100. You know what is $100? As far back as 1870 something. $100. That should be millions of dollars today. She refused to pay that fine and continued to campaign voraciously for female suffrage, a battle that was eventually won in 1919. From 1870 something to 1919, she won the battle against the women exclusion in the United States democracy. Today, many Biafrans in the United States, many Biafra of Nigeria, because the Biafrans in the United States are supporting what we're doing today. Many women from Biafra of Nigeria are enjoying the voting right in America, but a woman like you fought for it. My respect to those Biafra women who are deeply involved in the Biafra government. You are making history as part of the evolution of freedom for a better society. Suzanne best quote, I declare to you that women must not depend on the protection of man, but must freedom, and it is my right to fight and protect my people, and that I will do until our freedom is achieved. While in Africa today, many countries in Africa are against same-sex marriage. I want you to understand the evolution of freedom because of our culture in Africa. But let me remind you that America was there centuries ago. Where Africa is today, America was there centuries ago. And let me also make it very clear, I am not advocating for same-sex marriage. I am only taking you back to the history and the evolution of freedom. This, what American government, including the President of America, is supporting today. Of course, not Donald Trump. But those, Obama, Biden, and co, supporting today was abomination in America centuries ago. A man called Oscar Wilde, in his speech, "Love that dare not speak its name." This renewed speech by Oscar Wilde, made during his trial for gross indecency with other male person. This is perhaps one of the most emotional and poignant speech ever made. In it, Wilde Oscar described his love for Lord Alfred Douglas as such a great affection of an elder man for a young man. Choose the love that dare not speak its name. He described his love as beautiful, fine, and noblest form of affection. But Wilde Oscar explained the word does not understand it. He explained that the world back then does not understand it. Indeed, they mock his love as unnatural and unlawful. But Wilde's speech proved just the opposite, that there is, in fact, nothing like unnatural about it. After the speech, the atheist Max Weber told a friend that Oscar's speech was simply wonderful and carried the whole court right away, quite tremendous burst of applause. But in all the applauses given to Wilde, it was not enough. A second trial, Wilde was sentenced to 2 years in prison with hard labor for nothing other than his attraction to a member of the same sex. It was this time in prison that led to his tragic death. He died in prison a few years later. But today, the present and the past president of the United States of America are in the forefront, championing same-sex marriage, that somebody was sentenced to death and the person 2 years with hard labor and the person died in prison. Obama, Biden, and many of them in the United States today, leaders, are the one championing same-sex marriage. It has become law and legal, but someone in the name of Oscar Wilde died for it. Fellow Biafrans, evolution of freedom. You make history and make history happen. That is what Simon Ekpa, under the Biafra Republic government in exile, is doing. That history is what I and the entire cabinet and the supporters and sponsors are making today. As the fight for equality of women continued as far back as 1900, one of the leading feminist activists called Parkhurst incited a meeting to rebellion. Parkhurst was quoted by Nelson Mandela as supporting their militancy rebellion against apartheid. She said in a meeting, "I incite this meeting to rebellion." This
Ende by dalo lineno umife kunisi wene sora ni ane meni rapo bono pasinketa. Ese ko pasinketa amalo numma. I think which ya zero. Ende ko sidi. Ende kinoro ife Biafra Prime Minister kuni rapo. Zodo kibia bo. Iya bo Igbo media. Ka isi ko wene wetero nukuzi ya do kemba. Gini ki wene kubasta maka ya bife. Kabaro ke drop your comment, your own suggestion. Ni endani ne Biafra Prime Minister kuni rapo. Thank you so much and stay tuned at Igbo Media. Daro no munem kemesian.